The glory of humanity is the difference, the differentiation, individuality of each person, and the fact that each individual is unique and irreplaceable, which makes each individual precious, precious, precious.
I'd like to talk to you this afternoon about two classes of Americans, and it may not be the two classes you think of, but nonetheless, there are two distinct classes in America, and we have to break up.
You don't get freedom peacefully. Anyone who is depriving you of freedom isn't deserving of a peaceful approach.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being by any means necessary.
Welcome to the Unrestrained Thoughts Podcast, a Utah-based program that focuses on ideas, politics, culture, and the current events going on in the world around us, whether locally or globally. I'm your host, David Iglesias. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is currently... I should mute that. It is currently... Wow, what are the odds of that? It is 9:10, almost 9:11 on 9/11 of 2022. That was definitely not planned, but here we are. Now it's 9/11 on 9/11 of 2022. So, 21 years later since 9/11, I thought I would get on and just kind of do a solo thing, hopefully not too long. I want people to actually watch and listen to this. So I'll try to keep it less than an hour, but we'll see how I do. So obviously, as I mentioned, the topic that I want to talk about is 9/11 and a little bit about the event itself, how it's impacted me, and just a little bit about the lead up and the fallout or after 9/11. So, as everyone undoubtedly knows, 9/11 was one of the most, if not the most tragic and just awful moments in our country's history, when we were attacked by some extremist hijackers that flew some planes into two towers. And it's something that we make sure to always remember. Sorry, I keep getting these pop-ups. The thing that I've come to learn over the years is it's funny because we talk about never forget, always remember. We need to make sure that this is something that we keep close to our hearts and we honor every year. It's a good tradition. We want to make sure we remember important events, things that had major impacts on our lives. And I guess I'll start by kind of elaborating or sharing how that impacted me. So 2001, I would have been, 5 years old. So I don't honestly remember the day itself. I don't remember the event. But I definitely do remember growing up in a post 9/11 world. I remember very well constantly hearing on TV, and not just at my own father's house, or my family's house, or because my dad watches news or whatever. It's not just that. Anywhere I went, anywhere the news was on, it was definitely talked about. The rhetoric was nonstop. So for me, the biggest thing I remember growing up when it comes to 9/11, or even just foreign policy and war, the state of war that the U.S. has always been in and never actually declared, but always been in. I just think of how as a child I felt whenever I saw somebody, a Middle Eastern person, whether it was a man or a woman, in Middle Eastern traditional clothing. If it was a turban, if it was a shawl, like whatever clothing that was indicative of their heritage or their background or where, their connection to the Middle East, or the it doesn't even have to be the Middle East. It could just be of Islam, the faith. As a child, I would always get scared. I always got really nervous and freaked out because I was told by the television, by U.S. talking points, by the rhetoric of the time, that these were the people that blew up our towers, and they're the people that hate us and want to kill us Americans. Obviously, as a kid, you don't understand the complexities of foreign policy and geopolitics and religion. You just don't. So it wasn't that I was raised being told that, brown people are bad, white people are good. It wasn't just this overt racism that, some people want to try to attribute to it. My parents never raised me saying, oh yeah, a person from the Middle East is an evil, I won't say that, but they never said anything like degrading about them. Now, speaking as a whole, when it came to foreign policy, oh yeah, the Afghanis are this, or Iran, the Iranis are that. In that sense, maybe there was a little bit more of a different tone with it. But I was never raised to believe that, individuals of this background are, just because you're Muslim, you're bad. But it was very implied in the rhetoric of the time. You watch TV and they say, the extremists, the Muslim extremists, the Taliban, the Afghanistan, the Al Qaeda. I don't even know who these groups were at the time. And I just hear the names thrown around. I see images of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, who's from Iraq. But I remember growing up believing that Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were buddies that worked together, that they lived in a cave and they both wore turbans and they both, they conspired. And then I grow up and find out, no, Saddam Hussein is a clean-shaven dictator who wears a three-piece suit, and Osama is more of a he's of that image that I had just painted, of living in caves or wearing more traditional attire. They weren't the same team. That's the thing that's really just wild about this whole thing. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit too off topic. So with 9/11, I grew up in this world of getting on planes was terrifying for me. I'm sure it was nerve-wracking for everybody, especially as a kid. When I saw somebody in Middle Eastern garb board a plane with us, I was scared out of my mind. And I didn't know why, other than I was just images put on the television, be afraid. And that was very much what they wanted. They wanted to stoke fear. The media, the government, they wanted to stoke fear. I think the connection on here is really bad. Why would they want that? Well, the reason is because there were already set plans and agendas ahead of time to get involved in Middle Eastern conflicts, to go into, invade certain countries, regime change. These sort of things weren't novel, I guess I should say. So it was already something in the works, and this was the perfect excuse. Now, I don't want to, how do I put this? So when it comes to 9/11, the way I look at it is this. 9/11 was an awful, awful, awful moment committed by most just awful human beings to think that that is the answer, to actually board several planes and full of innocent people, and then to fly them into certain targets to kill as many people as they can. That is, I can't think of I can't think of anything more just diabolical and despicable as that. Cowardly, you could say. However, it's important to understand why it happened, how we got there, and what was the motivation. Because for most people, and again, growing up, it just came out of the clear blue sky. Oh, these people really hate us. They're just because we're Americans. They just really hate freedom. That's weird. Yeah, we should go kill them. We should get rid of those really crazy bad guys that want to kill me and my family. But then I learned more about history, and I learned more about foreign policy, and I learned more about how the US has carried itself over the years. And it became very clear to me that it is not simple. It is not as simple as saying, oh, yeah, good guys are over here in America, bad guys are over there in the Middle East. Christianity and American values, good. Islam and Muslims and Middle Eastern values, bad. That is not at all how this works. But it is how it has been painted, and it is how my generation and plenty of other people were raised or taught since the beginning of the 2000s. You know, the first 20 years of the 2000s have been nonstop war in the Middle East over surrounding this conflict. I say with air quotes because it's not really about 9/11. 9/11 was just a springboard. So, and I don't want to go into heavy details and stuff. It's not my place. Also, it's been a minute since I've done reading and stuff on this, so I'm not as fresh on it as, say, my friends like Reed Coverdale or Quinn Driggs or Scott Horton. You know, these are the experts on this issue. And I'll link to them, and I want everyone to go listen to their work, and so basically we had been in the middle. The U.S. had been in the Middle East for years. You know, since the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. That's when we were getting really involved with things over there. Was Soviet Union was invading Afghanistan. So what did we do? We went because we hated communism. Communism bad. I agree. We went and armed at the time the Mujahideen fighters who were Afghanis and Arabs and people of over in that era that were trying to prevent the invasion. Not all of them were from Afghanistan. This is important to understand because they all had similar backgrounds and the similar thing to fight for. And the U.S. went in, trained them, and armed them, gave them Stinger missile launchers, and gave them what the things they needed to fight off the Soviet Union, and they succeeded. And these are the same people that would later become Al-Qaeda. These are the same people that would later turn into the extremist, violent groups that we are over there fighting. We were on their side. You need to understand this principle of the U.S. flips sides constantly. We're on one team and then we're on the other. We're funding one group and then we're arming the other. We're starting an insurrection in this country to overthrow this dictatorship. And then once we get that regime reinstalled, we then turn on that one. It's the norm for the U.S. to flip on its quote-unquote allies or stab them in the back at one point. And that was the case with Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. They were both assets to the U.S. at one point. So we had armed the Mujahideen, which were these freedom fighters in Afghanistan. That ended. And then we never left the Middle East. And that is when Osama bin Laden started to really, I guess you could say, shift into this anti-U.S. Direction. Sorry, I'm pulling up a book, Fool's Errand by Scott Horton. You should go read it. Talks about Afghanistan and the lead up to that event. But I wanted to read some sections from here that actually, talk about why Osama threatens to attack the U.S. It was very clear. It wasn't again because we have genes and because we have Christianity and because we're good, awesome Americans. It had nothing to do with that. Sorry, I thought I had this book marked up, but I don't. No, there was very, very specific reasons. They call them the fatwas. But basically, the U.S. was occupying what these people, what Osama and the people, I apologize, I try to be careful when I say Arabs or middle. I'm very muddy on all the details of who and what. Point is that the people over there in the Middle East, many of them with the Islamic background, that faith, that practice, there are certain areas that are very holy to them, just like how in Christianity there are very holy places as well. So one of the big things is the U.S. it expanded and continued. It remained to, the Iran-Iraq, well, I'm getting things mixed up, but the Iran-Iraq War and the Kuwait crisis, all of these different things, the U.S. was continually overstaying in building military bases and increasing its presence in the Middle East, somewhere that we really had no business being in. And so, of course, you have people like Osama bin Laden and locals that are frustrated because we're occupying what's holy land to them. Think of if China or Russia or let's say the Middle East, let's say that they occupied our lands or areas that we hold sacred. We would be very pissed and we would do very similar things to push them out. So that was like a huge, huge reason as a motivation, because we were occupying these areas and they didn't want us there. They didn't ask for us to stay. But of course, the U.S. is going to do what the U.S. wants, and it's going to keep its interests above everything else. And when I say the U.S., I mean the U.S. government, the U.S. military-industrial complex. I'm not saying the people as a whole. So we're occupying those lands, killing, and again, I'm not saying we're just, the soldiers are going in and murdering innocent people per se, but the actions, the results of our actions, the consequences of the bombings and the invasions and the occupation, it did take a lot of innocent lives. It killed and displaced tons of innocent people. It was destroying the lives of so many people over there. And that's why they're getting angry. And not to get crazy into this, but, go look into the history of our relationship with Israel. And what is Israel's role in this? How have they acted? How have they handled themselves with their neighbors? The Palestinian situation, Israel-Palestine, is one of the most just heartbreaking and awful things to be going on right now, and no one understands it. They just know Israel good, Palestine bad, and that's not the case. So then also look into our friendships with the Saudis, Saudi Arabia. That's where that was like one of the crucial spots as far as, what Osama bin Laden had been explaining was his issue. Building bases there, Saudis are propping us up. We're making special deals with the Saudis that we will, as long as they sell oil in dollars, then we'll keep working with them. All these backdoor deals, all this shit that's meant to keep us on top and and our allies, but at the cost of other people. And these other people happen to be a lot of these people in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, all of these different Middle Eastern areas. There are people who are displaced and who are being screwed over by the U.S. presence and the policies. Most importantly, the policies behind what was going on. So things, we were still bombing the shit out of Iraq and killing tons of people. So then it led to 9/11. Again, not justifying 9/11, not justifying any of the attackers. I hope they burn in it. If there is a hell, I hope they burn in it for the rest of their lives, because there is no justification. You know what I should do? Let me pull this up. I'm gonna screen share. I want to pull up a video that a friend of mine, Liam McCollum, posted on Twitter. This is what many people refer to as the Rudy Giuliani moment for a really important man named Ron Paul. It was during the 2008 election debates and stuff. So Ron is debating other Republican conservatives for the presidential nominee position, and this was the interaction.
Intervention was a major contributing factor. Have you ever read about the reasons they attacked us? They attack us because we've been over there. We've been bombing Iraq for 10 years. We've been in the Middle East. I think Reagan was right. We don't understand the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics. So right now we're building an embassy in Iraq that's bigger than the Vatican. We're building 14 permanent bases. What would we say here if China was doing this in our country or in the Gulf of Mexico? We would be objecting. We need to look at what we do from the perspective of what would happen if somebody else did it to us.
Are you suggesting we invited the 9/11 attack, sir?
I'm suggesting that we listen to the people who attacked us and the reason they did it. And they are delighted that we're over there because Osama bin Laden has said, I am glad you're over on our sand because we can target you so much easier. They have already now, since that time, killed 3,400 of our men, and I don't think it was necessary.
Wendell, may I make a comment on that? That's really an extraordinary statement. That's an extraordinary statement as someone who lived through the attack of September 11th, that we invited the attack because we were attacking Iraq. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and I've heard some pretty absurd explanations for September 11th.
I never heard we were attacking Iraq. This is absurd that they would attack us because we were attacking Iraq.
And I would ask the congressman to withdraw that comment and tell us that he didn't really mean that.
Congressman?
I believe very sincerely that the CIA is correct when they teach and talk about blowback. When we went into Iran in 1953 and installed the Shah, yes, there was blowback. The reaction to that was the taking of our hostages, and that persists. And if we ignore that at our own risk. That if we think that we can do what we want around the world and not incite hatred, then we have a problem. They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there. I mean, what would we?
So that's what many call the famous Rudy Giuliani moment. That first man is Ron Paul. First and last speaker is Ron Paul, Rudy Giuliani being the other individual who was shocked. He'd never heard of the idea that because we're bombing the shit out of people in Iraq that it would instigate violence and hatred over here. Funny, that's really weird how he would never know that. So, point is, like Ron Paul said, is that there were things leading up to 9/11, and it didn't have to go this way. And it's very unfortunate that the US government and the military-industrial complex and the political leaders up in Washington, D.C. continue to make decisions at the expense of everybody else. The irony about it is that they call it national defense. We're over there to protect us over here. If we don't fight the bad guys there, they will bring it here. That's the talking point. And I can't tell you how absurd it is after learning about the different events, the different invasions, the different wars, and how much pain and suffering it has caused us over here, both as U.S. citizens, as veterans, as people who have the taxpayers, as members of an economy that is just destroyed as a result of changing the interest rates and spending trillions of dollars. What it has done to us is you cannot even begin to understand the level of damage, both financially, emotionally, physically, that the follow-up, the lead-up and the 9/11 and the follow-up have all caused. 9/11 was not something the U.S. did, but we did lead up to it, and we did decide what to do after. And everything has been devastation, both here and abroad. The amount of innocent lives that have been, we talk about it was like almost 3,000, I think just under 3,000 lives that were lost on 9/11. There have been multiple 9/11s in matters of days, if not single days, overseas because of the policies going on. And people want to talk about the Taliban being an evil, anti-human rights organization or whatever. They're very old-fashioned. They treat women like garbage, and these things are true. I'm not even arguing, that they're a great organization. However, let me give you some perspective. We replaced the Taliban I say that term loosely. I don't associate myself with the U.S. government or those leaders. The U.S. installed warlords and sectarians and some of the most awful people in the Taliban's place in Afghanistan. It's not like we went in and created a new freedom-loving, they're all the Thomas Jeffersons, George Washingtons of the area. No, some of these people were like straight up warlords who had murdered countless people because here's the thing about, and I'm sorry, I'm getting into like all these different things. I'm trying to focus on 9/11, but you can't talk about 9/11 without talking about the beginning or the before and the after. Afghanistan is a very civilly divided country. When I say that, I mean you have different factions, you have different clans, you have different what's the word, like families and different communities. They're not all one same Afghanistan single-minded group. You have the northern versus the southern. You have these different groups that have been at each other's throats forever. And then the U.S. shows up and picks a side. We say, you know what, we're gonna side with these guys because we think we can actually get them to be on our side, and we'll overthrow these other people. We're gonna install these guys into being the leadership. One of the most heartbreaking, and the thing that makes me the most just angry whenever I hear people bring up, well, women's rights and little girls are going to school. That is really important. It is crucial that we stand up for those things. But what was the cost? One of the costs, I'll tell you, is something called bachibazi or bachabazi. So when we started installing the new Afghan military, who was going to replace the U.S. once we finally got out of there after 20 fucking years, they were going to take the place and they were going to be trained up and ready to run shit. Well, we also installed a police force, and there are stories. I have heard these stories firsthand from veterans, from people over there, about this absolutely just disgusting practice of bachibazi, where basically you have the adult males, the men, the leaders, or whatever of these locals, and they would make little boys dance and do sexual acts on them. It was fucking rape. They were raping little boys. So, oh yeah, thank God we got rid of the Taliban because now little girls can go to school. But also we install people that they rape little boys, and they have a history of murdering countless people. It's not like we just traded good for bad or bad for good. It is not that simple. There is so much shit that was going on, so much awful stuff that was happening. We were not picking the best people to fill in these spots. Hell, if you want to get personal, you want to get local, let's talk about Utah. We had North Ogden Mayor, it was Taylor, I think it's Brent Taylor. I apologize if I get it wrong. I'm not going to go look it up in the moment. He was a mayor, and he was a National Guard member from Utah, over helping train up, is my camera in focus? Train up in Afghanistan these freedom fighters, or the new leadership that was supposed to fill in for us. I apologize, the camera's getting all blurry and I don't know how to fix it. So Brent was killed on an insider attack. This shit is what happened. This is and that was the norm. He was training these people. The people he was training, one of them turned on him and killed him. And now Brent's family has been left without a father, without a husband, and the city of Ogden was left without a mayor. And whatever other communities he was a part of here. He's just one man. This has happened to hundreds and thousands of other people, Americans. So, sorry, I'm like trying to recollect my thoughts. Point being, the things that the U.S. did to lead up to 9/11 are important to understand. If we're going to talk about never forget, always remember, we have to hold this moment in history very dear to us because it was a crucial moment. Stupid camera. Then we have to understand the full context. Man, this connection is getting really bad. We have to understand the full context of the situation to really fully remember because I had nothing to remember other than 2 planes flying into 2 buildings. And then 3,000, we lost 3,000 lives. And then I'm told, all right, time to remember. We always have to remember every goddamn year. Let's remember. Put out your flag. Think a veteran. Think a emergency service responder. That's it. That's all we do. We don't actually learn about what happened and then why we got there and where we are now. Why, after 20 years in Afghanistan, we finally get out. We Biden majorly botched it, but I mean, hey, he at least saw it. I really didn't think he was going to see it through, but he did. But 20 years later, and then that all falls apart. And it's like, what are we doing? But we have to talk about and remember 9/11. But no one really knows what to talk about other than the day. It's not enough to just remember and talk about the day. We have to understand the details and the context of the greater situation, because it affects all of us in ways we can't even imagine. I'm so tired of growing up. My entire life has been revolved around war, has revolved around conflicts in other countries. Now in the last couple of years, it's been Russia, Ukraine, and China. Those are the big ones right now. Those are the big bad guys, because Middle East, we're kicking ass over there. But it has been nonstop fighting. My whole life has been in the background details of my life. Even when I wasn't invested in politics or cared about any of this stuff, there were glimpses of these events. And I was always living in fear of like a terrorist attack. And when is the next, 9/11 going to happen? Am I going to get drafted and sent off to war? That was always in the background. And then understanding how the current situation, the economic crisis, and just the civil unrest and just the falling apart of this country, it all wraps around these conflicts and these policies that the U.S. government enacts overseas. I think that's pretty much all I should. I mean, I don't want to take up too much more time. I don't know what more else to say other than listen. Maybe you roll your eyes hearing me say it because I'm not a veteran. I've not served. I don't have any skin in this game. Let's say. I mean, I have a grandfather who was drafted and sent to the Korean border. That's about the extent of my own personal investment in this. I have friends. I have a few friends that I've reconnected with that are, they're enlisted in the military, in the Guard. And, I have new friends that I've made that are veterans. I've been able to learn about this community of, peace advocates and anti-war activism and people that have seen firsthand. I work with and talk to and am friends with plenty of people who have seen the results firsthand of these policies we carry out. They've seen the destruction over in the Middle East. They've seen what their team that they're fighting on has done. And I've heard firsthand from them the internal moral conflict that they have, or the regret, or the frustration. And as someone who doesn't have that experience, it is really eye-opening to hear that, because I'm told, thank them for their service, and they're the heroes, and we need to do everything for them. And I do respect, and a lot of these people, these friends of mine, family, of course they're heroes. I admire them greatly for the sacrifice they make and that they are willing to make. But maybe we should listen to them more, because there's a lot of them who talk about this. They talk about the destruction that this has caused them and the pain and suffering it has brought to them. So maybe for 9/11, we should not only remember, but we should learn and understand and listen to those who've actually firsthand been involved. Obviously, not every single one of them is going to be in the same opinion as me or who I'm mentioning, but there are a lot of them, and I've met them and I continue to meet them. So I guess what I want to leave with is, if your big takeaway is that I'm apologizing for the terrorists of 9/11, which happens, it really does happen when you try to bring up, just like the clip I showed you. I try to, it's try it, the attempt is made to bring up the context and the broader understanding, and people don't want that. It's offensive. It's painful. So all I'm saying is, look, let me give you an example. And it's not the perfect example, but it is an example. Let's say you have you take a teenager, you lock him in the basement for 5 years, and you torture the shit out of him. You make his life miserable, you starve him, you torture him. And then this kid turns into a monster. Then he eventually gets out. And this kid is so broken, so angry, so frustrated. Let me add this to it. Let's make it more accurate. You kidnap him and his family. You murder his family in front of him, and you continue to torture this teenager. And then he gets out. Not only does he kill his captors, he goes on a killing spree because he's so mentally just broken. He goes after this person's family. So he doesn't only go after his captor, he finds out who his captor's family members are and goes and kills this family. And then he goes and kills the neighbors. And then he goes on a killing spree. It's absurd, I know. This is like an extreme dumb story. The point being is, we can all agree that it was wrong for that boy. If you take out the context and you see that this kid's going on a killing spree, we would all be like, holy shit, we need to stop that. He's going and killing people, just random people, just killing them. But then you rewind and you understand, oh my God, this kid had been locked in a basement, watched his family get murdered, and this guy had tortured him. It helps you understand, okay, maybe it's not just like out of nowhere that this happened. Like there's some really important details here to, someone else needs to be held responsible. I mean, the captor we're saying in this scenario was killed. But the point is that you have to understand each part of the story to really fully grasp what even is happening. If we just come in the middle of the story, like with 9/11, where you're in the middle of the play and the planes come in and you're like, oh shit, what just happened? But you miss the first act of the play leading up to it, and then you see the second half of the play. Well, the second half is going to be, you're only going to understand the second half of the play based off of the one event you saw. So for the people who've been watching the whole movie, they're going to realize that what the US was doing in the second half of this play, bombing continually and occupying and regime changing and going after, these terrorists. Some of them are terrorists. A lot of the people that they killed weren't. If you only watch that second half of the play coming in from the very middle moment with 9/11, of course the second half is going to seem like the right thing. But if you watch the first half and get the full understanding, then you're going to know, oh my God, like, what is going on here? We're doing the exact same things that got us into this situation to respond to the situation. And I guess I'll close with this. Let's even assume 9/11 happens. Let's go invade. Let's go get these people, these monsters. Okay. Well, how many people actually know the story of what happened when we went in? Because in 2001, the same year that 9/11 happened, in December of 2001, let me pull it up. I actually have it marked in this book. So this one is Enough Already by Scott Horton. It's his second book. I guess you could say sequel, something like that, to Fool's Errand. 2001. Let's see, where did it go? Okay, The Great Escape. This is page 53. So I'll finish with this. This is not to say that the Bush administration was especially determined to capture or kill Osama bin Laden. This author, Scott Horton, makes the case in Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, that the Bush administration must have deliberately let bin Laden escape to Pakistan. This is the important part. When the Delta Force and CIA had bin Laden and the other al-Qaeda leaders pinned down at Tora Bora in Afghanistan's eastern Nangarhar province in December 2001, they did call in some massive airstrikes and kill a few hundred al-Qaeda fighters there. It was possible that they could have killed bin Laden that way. However, The Bush administration absolutely refused to commit the available ground forces to seal off the border and make sure Al Qaeda did not escape. Thousands of Army Rangers were already occupying the Bagram Air Base north of the capital city of Kabul, just 100 miles or so from Tora Bora. A detachment of Green Berets was fighting the Taliban in the north of the country, and then Marine General James Mattis, later the Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump, had 4,000 Marines nearby in the Kandahar province. He later claimed to have requested permission to get into the fight. None of them were allowed to back up the Delta Force and their local, quote, Eastern Alliance militia proxies at Tora Bora, despite repeated requests from the commanders in charge of the mission on the ground. And then I'll jump to this. Gary Bernstein, the second CIA commander in the field in charge of the early part of the war, wrote in his book, Jawbreaker, that he and his superiors begged, quote, begged for reinforcements for weeks and weeks and were consistently told no. So, point is, we had Osama bin Laden cornered in December of 2001. There were Green Berets, there were Delta Force, there were all of these forces ready to go. They were bombing the region, but there were ground forces ready to go and get Osama bin Laden before he escaped to Pakistan, where he got refuge. But they were denied that, as I just read. They had requested and begged, quote, begged to go in and get him, and the U.S. government under George Bush said no. So what is it really about? If it's really about getting the bad guys, why would they let him escape right there in December of 2001? We could have been home. We could have finished that war, could have got the bad guys, and said, all right, look, it took us less than a year to get these guys. It took us from September 11th, 2001 to December 2001. We got them. They did this shit, and we took care of business and came back. That's how badass the U.S. is. That could have been the narrative, but it wasn't. Instead, it turned into a 20-year-long conflict. And then an embarrassment when we left, and everything fell apart, and thousands of lives have been ruined. American lives, and then countless hundreds of thousands of lives, maybe even in the millions of the Middle East. This is the result of 9/11. This is the legacy of 9/11. And I hope to God we can change that, and I hope more people will take the time to learn about 9/11. And not just the day, not just the event, but the lead up. Learn about the role that the Saudis had. The Saudis, how they basically, this is the 28 pages. Go look up the 28 pages, 9/11. Go learn about Israel, our relationship with Israel, and how Israel's invasion, the Grapes of Wrath invasion that they carried out, inspired the lead Al Qaeda hijacker. I think it's Muhammad Atta. I think it was Muhammad Atta. The lead hijacker in the 9/11 flights was inspired. He was I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he was a college student. And then he saw what the Israeli invasion, the Grapes of Wrath invasion, did to his family or to his community, and it radicalized him. Imagine seeing your family and your friends murdered or attacked by a foreign country. How would you respond? Again, I'm not saying he's justified in killing thousands of people, but I'm saying there are consequences to ours and our allies' actions, and it inspires and motivates hatred against us, which sucks because I hate the government. I hate our government just as much as, maybe not even as much as they do, because they've literally bombed their families, but I hate them because it puts my life and everyone I love at risk of stupid actions and results from their decisions and their policies. Blowback, as Ron Paul called it. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think that was probably way longer than I wanted, coming up on an hour, probably. Not quite. But go learn more about 9/11. Read enough already. You can't see because of the light. By Scott Horton. Read Fool's Errand by Scott Horton. I don't know if you can see it. That book right there, The Afghan Papers. Go read that. Go read Coverdale. Go follow Quinn Driggs. Go follow Scott Horton. Go read these people. Go follow antiwar.com or the Libertarian Institute. These are all resources that give you the information that you will never find. At least you will never find it in the moment and in the time that it is important to have it. When it comes to, the main, I don't even want to call them mainstream, but the corporate press, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all of those legacy media, they're not going to give you this information when you need it. And they're going to lie to you like they did, how they lied us into these wars. Because remember, these Muslim extremists from, the hijackers, Afghanistan wasn't even, they weren't even the ones that did this to us. It was Saudis. It was an Egyptian, some Saudis. There was not a single Afghani. In fact, sorry, I keep going on these anecdotes. There's a story I heard of U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan in some random ass place talking to the locals, and they're like, they bring up 9/11, and they're like, "What's New York?" And the soldiers were like, "It's a village in the U.S. that was bombed, and it's why we're here." these local Afghanis had no idea what it even was, but here we were occupying their land. So yes, let's remember 9/11. Let us remember and honor those whose lives were unjustly and horribly taken from them, and the countless lives that were ruined because of it. The families and the friends, people who lost loved ones. It is heartbreaking. It is awful. And let us take time to think about that, to honor them, remember them, and especially the emergency responders. There were plenty of them who lost their lives and who endured trauma ever since and have had their lives greatly affected by this. Let's honor them and remember them, because they, that was a major sacrifice on their part. So, and then of course, the soldiers, just because I'm anti-war and hate the military-industrial complex and hate the government doesn't mean I hate soldiers. I have, again, friends that are soldiers. I very much respect those who want to stand up and protect the lives of those they love and the values they stand for. Soldiers aren't bad people. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm not equating, the atrocities going on in these conflicts overseas to all soldiers bad. I mean, it's the soldiers who I'm trying to stand up for, god damn it. With this Defend the Guard bill and all this stuff. I mean, I'm trying to listen to those that I know. So, yes, let's honor them as well. But if we really want to honor the memory of these people and honor their sacrifice and their work, all of them, we have to understand the broader context so we can never let this happen again. That's the thing that drives me crazy, is when they say never again, never again. How do we stop it from never happening again? I'll tell you that you're not going to be able to do that unless you fully understand every aspect, beginning to the end, not just the middle. Let's make sure this never happens again. But you have to learn what happened before the day and after the day. And I'm going to keep saying that. I know it's annoying, but it's more annoying to hear people say the same thing for 26 years of my life. I hear the same thing over and over again. And it becomes less and less important. It becomes less meaningful every time it happens, every year. So if we want to make a difference, we want this to become important again and really, really actually matter, we have to do everything possible. So go learn about this and stop supporting people who are willing to throw us into these, stop supporting politicians and leadership that will throw us into these conflicts. All right, that's it. I'm done. I could keep going on. So happy Sunday, friends.